Peter Barnes, thank you very much. Well, for some preview of what we can expect in that House Financial Services Committee meeting later today about TARP accountability, joining me right now are two members of Congress who stand on the House Financial Services Committee. First of all, Congressman Gwen Moore, who's standing right next to me here, is kind enough to join me in the Cannon Rotunda. And also joining me is Congressman Patrick McHenry, who is joining me on the other side in our Washington, D.C. Bureau. Great to see you both. Thank you so much for being here. This is so beautiful. I have to say, I could get used to working in here. I love this building.
Absolutely.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. McHenry.
So, Congressman Moore, let me
Gwen.
ask you, first of all, Timothy Geithner went out yesterday. He tried to explain how he's going to use the second half of the TARP funds. It did not go over very well. Were you disappointed, surprised? How do you feel about it?
Well, you know, here we are again, assuming that markets are rational and pragmatic and calm. And I think that the news, first of all, that there would be a lot of transparency and accountability, may not have gone over well. And in addition to that, I think that this new stress test, where we're going to actually find out what the value of these assets are. They are, but it's still very frightening. You have to face the music.
Yes. That's a great point. Congressman McHenry, let me get your reaction. Number one, let's first start. What do you think about Geithner's performance yesterday? Was he criticized too much?
Well, I think the markets reacted with a 5% drop in the Dow yesterday with the new secretary's first speech. I think that was a rude awakening for him. I think it was neither specific nor detailed enough in order to give the markets the confidence it needs. And Congresswoman Moore and I do share the same concerns that we want transparency and disclosure. We want to make sure it's a solid plan that keeps the taxpayers less at risk than the Paulson TARP proposal. And I'm hopeful that it will do that, but there are not specifics yet enough for us to talk rationally about this plan.
Yeah, and also, let's fast forward for a moment, because not only will Geithner testify today in day two, but you two will be sitting at the table with some of the most famous CEOs on Wall Street, financial institutions. I imagine the questions will be tough. What do you need to hear today to convince you that they're using the funds judiciously?
Well, I think, Alexis, I'm not defending the CEOs. They're going to tell us, oh, we're lending. But I think that providing liquidity just isn't enough. I mean, we have got to make sure that certain parts of the plan that Geithner talked about is that we actually help homeowners stay in their homes is executed. I mean, we have to make sure that we're using this small seed of public money to leverage and sort of entice investors back into the market. And this is a lot more difficult. And I think that maybe that's why Geithner's message sort of fell flat yesterday with investors, because there's a real role for them. We don't have $1 trillion of taxpayer dollars to expose. We need investors to take those risks. And these banks, we're going to try to buy some of the bad assets off their books, but they are going to have to step up to the plate and tell us what they're going to do with this second tranche of TARP.
I could not agree with you more. Congressman McHenry, it's very interesting. One of the main topics of debate yesterday is how do we value the assets? How do we know that we're going to get private capital into the system if financial institutions are valuing them at 75 cents on the dollar and the private fund to buy them want to buy them at 20 cents on the dollar? I mean, is that one of the big debates here? How do we value the assets that are sitting on their balance sheets today?
Well, Alexis, first of all, it's all private capital. The federal government is running over $1 trillion deficit this year. The federal government will have to go into the private markets, get private capital in order to put liquidity into the system and to fund the TARP program. So it's all private capital. The real issue is how you value it. And there are a number of catchwords and bullet points in Geithner's proposal that need to be fleshed out. What's the risk to the taxpayer? How do you value the asset? What's the end game? How do we get out of this system in order to prevent inflation in the out years? These are all open questions on how we do it. And the fact is that Secretary Geithner has been sharp enough to realize the government is very poor at judging the value of assets. The marketplace is much better, and the private sector is much better. Therefore, some private capital, some private investors need to be a part of this process so we get a better value for the taxpayer dollar.
You know, Congressman Moore, I was, yesterday morning I started thinking about this, and I said to myself, all right, the American people are so angry about this, and sort of no matter what Treasury Secretary Geithner does right now, there's a legacy issue here. But Bank of America's Ken Lewis today and Vikram Panda from Citigroup are going to say that they understand their fiduciary responsibility to give the taxpayer a return on their investment. But the problem for the American taxpayer is we feel like we're putting up all the risk, but when the government gets paid back the funds later on, will we, the American taxpayer, feel the benefit of that? Will we get anything back?
Well, I think that's why I would love to see some of the flesh on the bones of the other parts of Geithner's proposals. These facilities to provide consumer loans and business loans. That's the main thing that froze up and has had a direct impact on the American taxpayers. And I think that that's not only getting the dividend on our substantial risk of investment, but to actually see the credit markets unfreeze more immediately with the buildup of these facilities. I've taken a role on the Oversight Committee, a subcommittee of the Financial Services Committee. Probably it's not the sexiest subcommittee, but I am going to patiently watch and hold accountable what's done with these TARP dollars.
Congressman McHenry, before I let you guys go, I said to somebody yesterday, we didn't hire the President of the United States. We voted on the Chief Executive Officer of the United States, and the members of Congress are the board of directors here. Has your role changed? I mean, with the amount of homework that you guys are doing, I'm sure this is more than you ever imagined you signed up for.
It is quite a challenge. Look, we're looking at historic times. It's been a generation since we've seen these same unemployment numbers back to the early 80s and late 70s, and it's been a challenging moment for the markets. Let's just be honest about it. But the issue here is how we get the best bang for the taxpayer dollar, how we fix this problem. And we had testimony yesterday by Chairman of the Federal Reserve, Bernanke, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And like I said, it's a crazy time. But Chairman Bernanke was outlining what he views as sort of the long-term future of these plans, and even what he outlined is not detailed enough for the markets to correctly judge. So we're living in a special moment in American history, but whether you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. We're taking this matter very seriously. And the issue today is whether or not these banks are going to appropriately judge the right use of these TARP dollars that are flowing from the taxpayers to them. And we want to make sure that they're not simply padding their balance sheet, but they're actually producing consumer lending.
Using it for,
these are the questions we've got to work through, Alexis.
All right, to the two of you, I thank you both so much. A great conversation. Wonderful having you guys, and I look forward to watching all of that testimony today.
Well, the world is depending on us.
That's right.
The United States has got to lead in getting this under control.
Ask some tough questions. All right, guys. Well, let's switch gears for a moment here and talk a little bit about the international reaction to what happened.